Sherry was able to identify that I had some trauma in my life from childhood on that I probably hadn't completely resolved. Interestingly, I had worked with other counselors over the past 30 years, particularly in my 30s when I went through my divorce and began to understand about trauma and about healing. I worked with some counselors at that point and did some inner child work and thought I had a pretty good handle on things. But interestingly, these same issues that trauma had put in my life kept reoccurring in different ways throughout my decades, different ways in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and even on into my 60s. And it wasn't until I met Sherry that I think some of it was truly healed. I think in the previous decades, I had begun to understand intellectually the impact of trauma and what trauma does to the psyche, the soul, and the body. But it wasn't until Sherry that I think it really wrapped up and healed it. An example, a childhood example is that I had, when I was 5 years old, physicians gave me a new IV antibiotic for my pneumonia, and they gave me an adult dose. And apparently I almost died, and it destroyed my gut, and they rushed me to the hospital where the Catholic nuns in their black robes had to hold me down while I had to have enemas and lavage my stomach and different things done. So it was a medically related trauma at a young age. But from that age on, I always had a dream. And in that dream, I was walking on the road, the brick road in my small town, and I'd step on a spider and it'd get bigger, and I'd step on it and it'd get bigger. And pretty soon, this big black hairy armed spider was cowering over me and devouring me. And in the 30s, when I did some inner child work, we realized that that's probably related to the black habitat of the nuns as I was processing that emotional trauma. When I went through my divorce in my 30s, that dream came back. And it was, I think, related to what was happening to me at that time in my relationship. So I intellectually knew that this was all there, but interestingly, that dream would reoccur each decade when something traumatic was happening in my life. And now in my 60s, Sherry was doing a session with me one day, and she said, let's go back to when you were 5. And I had not told Sherry about that incident yet. And she knew that something happened to me at age 5. I said, okay. And she did her thing. And I went back emotionally, age-wise, to that 5-year-old little child. And she walked me through going back and rescuing myself, and not just rescuing and recovering, but really integrating that lost piece of myself back into myself. I know that sounds pretty woohoo, but again, I had done inner child work before, and nothing like this had happened before. So I did the process with Sherry, and when I came out of that, I felt lighter and different than I ever had before. And it stayed different. I can't explain it. When Sherry helps you reintegrate a lost piece of yourself, or a piece of yourself that you blocked away because of trauma, there is a healing and a wholeness that happens. She's worked with me on a couple of other childhood things that happened along the way. And jokingly, she looked at me the other day and she said, we need to set some more sessions. I think you have 3 left you haven't shared yet. And I laughed and I thought, oh, I don't have 3, do I? Do I still have 3 left? And I'll be darned, I went home, and in my quiet time with my Lord, I started thinking about it and praying about it, and boom, boom, boom. I know what 3 I need to go back and work on, and there's some of them that I haven't thought about in 30 years. But when they came back to my mind, tears flowed, emotions flowed, and I was like, yep, that is still in there, and I can heal that piece. So I'm going to go back with Sherry and we'll work on those things over time.